Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's coverage of the ongoing civil war taking place inside of the former state of Ethiopia, the fighting continues. We're going to cover a range of topics today. First and foremost, I'll jump right into some military updates. The updates in terms of what is happening on the ground right now I don't want to say is becoming static or any less information. But right now we're looking at what I would say is more or less a lull in some of the more high intensity fighting that is taking place. And in fact, this has given both sides the ability to reconsolidate its forces and to continue the mobilization efforts. And we're continuing to see that inside of the Tigray region. Obviously, the recent offensive by the Tigrayan Defense Forces, the punitive invasion that took place deep into the Amhara region, has concluded. And for all intents and purposes, most Tigrayan Defense Force personnel has been withdrawn back into the borders of the Tigray region, with the exception of areas along the areas of southwestern Tigray in this area. Now, with that being said, we are continuing to see a bit of an uptick in fighting near Abala. We are hearing reports of a possible military buildup by the Tigrayan Defense Forces as the Afar regional forces continue to harry and harass and conduct cross-border raids, and at the same time, many Tigrayans that had lived in the town of Abala were either expelled or placed in detention camps by the Abiy loyalist formations and Afar regional militia forces. But again, we could see some sort of renewed punitive action by the Tigrayan Defense Forces in terms of possibly moving into areas of the Afar region. But again, in all likelihood, an actual re-invasion of the Afar region with the intent of possibly moving to take very large areas of the Afar region, I would say is very, very remote and for all practical purposes probably unwise. In terms of possibly creating a buffer zone or going into the Afar region and eliminating some of these Afar regional militia units that are operating near Abala and some other places, and doing cross-border raids into the Tigray region as the TDF continues its buildup in operations to liberate western Tigray from the clutches of the Eritrean army and Amhara regional militia forces, which would then place the conflict back into, in terms of territorial gains, back prior to the start of the conflict more than a year ago. In other news, I'm starting to hear more and more comments and feedback from former supporters of Abiy Ahmed. And obviously, there are some concerns about the state of affairs inside of the former state of Ethiopia. I think when Abiy Ahmed came into power, and especially after winning the Nobel Peace Prize, no one would have really thought that that very close relationship with Isaias Afwerki would have resulted in the joint invasion of the Eritrean army, an external actor, and the Abiy loyalist formations, the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, invading the Tigray region and kicking off what we are now looking at as a multi-year civil war involving multiple ethnic groups in this diverse nation state, or I should say, this former nation state. But there's some other intelligence that has come in over the course of the last year plus that would indicate that, in fact, Abiy Ahmed, the now warlord of the former state of Ethiopia, quite possibly has no intention of leaving power. There has been reports in functions and meetings and get-togethers in which Abiy Ahmed has indicated that he plans to stay in power for at least 20 years. And again, we are starting to see the former state of Ethiopia, at least in terms of the areas controlled by the warlord Abiy Ahmed, that is turning into more of a unitary one-party system with the Prosperity Party in complete control, and they operate under the auspice of a parliamentarian system. Now, with that being said, the Abiy regime has done a very, very good job of incarcerating and throwing into prison those personnel that could cause problems for him in a normal democratic process. So we've seen a host of different leaders throughout the former state of Ethiopia, persons who could possibly vie for power, vie for some of the parliamentarian vote inside of the former state of Ethiopia. And unfortunately, many of those personnel have been thrown in prison, or if they desire to be released from prison, they must then bend the knee to Abiy Ahmed and his Prosperity Party. But again, we have also heard that in conversations with Isaias Afwerki, that in fact Abiy Ahmed has indicated that he would like to stay in power for longer than his mentor, his chief mentor, Isaias Afwerki. So again, I think you really have to look at that relationship in terms of where Abiy Ahmed is heading as he continues in this leadership role over the areas of the former state of Ethiopia that he controls. And obviously, if you, it is one thing to enter into an agreement with a nation state that you have been in conflict in. And obviously, Ethiopia, before it fragmented, was at war with Eritrea over the course of the last 20 years, especially in the late 90s and very, very early 2000s. So again, that relationship evolved, and Abiy Ahmed was able to garner a truce between Isaias Afwerki and the former state of Ethiopia, and that is what won him his Nobel Peace Prize. But after those engagements took place, we continued to see Abiy Ahmed become closer and closer and closer with Isaias Afwerki. So if you are a leader of a very large democracy, which Ethiopia espouses to believe it is, then why would that leader of said large democracy continue to both become closer diplomatically and personally with a despotic leader the likes of Isaias Afwerki? Well, again, it all comes down to power and staying into power. And ultimately, we have come to the conclusion at MFAN, based on some reasonable intelligence, that Abiy Ahmed has no desire to ever relinquish power. And by all indication, he believes that he can reign over Ethiopia, or the former state of Ethiopia, until he exceeds the age of 65 years old. But again, there's also those back and forth jokes that occur that have been leaked out of the relationship between Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki, in which Abiy Ahmed has stipulated that he wishes to remain in power longer than even Isaias Afwerki. So again, if you look at that relationship between Isaias Afwerki, his closest ally right now on the planet, meaning Abiy Ahmed, is Isaias Afwerki in the despotic regime of Eritrea. So again, if Abiy Ahmed was becoming close with a more rational and a democratic actor around the globe, whoever that could be, then you could say, okay, well, possibly he believes in true democracy. And unfortunately, for the former state of Ethiopia, that is not the case. He is becoming very, very much closer and closer to Isaias Afwerki, the despotic leader of Eritrea. And again, feel free to do research in terms of comparing and contrasting Eritrea with some of the more despotic regimes on the planet, such as North Korea. And again, Isaias Afwerki falls right into that style of leadership in terms of reign of power and how he keeps power. Now, we are still waiting to see what happens in terms of the next leader of Eritrea. Is it one of his children that steps in and becomes the next leader of Eritrea, much like we have seen this dynastic rule in North Korea? So, again, very, very possible. But again, that sort of leadership style that we've seen in North Korea, that we've seen in Eritrea, now appears to be manifesting itself in the former state of Ethiopia. There is a apparent plan to start creating a cult of personality around Abiy Ahmed, and that is one of the first indications that you would see that he is not going to relinquish power. So again, apparently the plan, if and when the civil war has ended or as it continues, again, is to create that cult of personality around Abiy Ahmed. So again, for all intents and purposes, it would appear, again, we believe here at MFAN that Abiy Ahmed has no intention of relinquishing power in the former state of Ethiopia. And again, given the facts on the ground in terms of what we are seeing within the context of the Civil War and the arrests and the level of internal security and the policies and the procedures that Abiy Ahmed is instituting, would indicate that he will never relinquish power. And in fact, you can really see from a standpoint of some of the, again, not just the transition of the cult of personality, but the actual deployment and the creation of security forces. He created the Republican Guard. Ethiopia did not have a Republican Guard until Abiy Ahmed came into power. I meant to say Isaias Afwerki came into power, but I guess, so to speak, he is in power to a certain extent, as without Eritrean support, in all likelihood, Abiy Ahmed would have been dethroned by internal unrest. But again, you continue to see that security, that internal security apparatus that encircles Abiy Ahmed. So again, the creation of the Republican Guard, the expansion of the NISS and other intelligence agencies operating inside of the former state of Ethiopia, again, by all indications, appears to be the processes of never relinquishing power. And other issues, obviously, is in terms of individuals who no longer support Abiy Ahmed. And we now believe that there is a silent or fearful majority inside of the former state of Ethiopia that does not, in fact, support Abiy Ahmed. And we're now seeing a high-intensity civil war within the Oromia region, and obviously in other areas of Ethiopia, or the former state of Ethiopia that is since fragmented. We continue to see an uptick in fighting between ethnic groups, and then obviously the major fighting that is occurring as the Tigrayan Defense Forces, the Tigray region, has broken away from Ethiopia proper. And again, we at MFAN simply do not believe that given the devastating fracture of the social contract that has occurred inside of Ethiopia, that we would see Ethiopia, or I'm sorry, the Tigray region rejoin Ethiopia. We believe that eventually the Tigray region would have to become a de facto independent state or announce itself as a fully autonomous and independent republic. Outside of that, it would appear the only other option would be for Abiy Ahmed to launch a renewed invasion and forcibly make the Tigray region submit to his reign and be brought back into the fold, so to speak. But again, I just wanted to cover that and talk about that. Again, we are seeing in terms of persons who at one point supported Abiy Ahmed and now not so much. As again, no one would have really thought after the winning of the Nobel Peace Prize that a high intensity civil war lasting now quite possibly for multiple years could start to take place. No one saw that, and obviously as the economy continues to constrict and collapse, and that really hasn't even been felt yet as the burden on the economy in terms of the purchase of weapons and the conscription that is going on and the raising of a very, very large military, that has not even been felt as of yet in terms of the full weight of what that is going to do to the former state of Ethiopia. But we will obviously continue our coverage as soon as we get more information in terms of any battlefield coverage. We will certainly cover that and inform you, the viewer. And that's all we have for today. Have a good day, and we will be back soon.